Hey guys, good evening. This is Mohit from Moneyfront. It's good to have you all back out here. We'll quickly roll out an Insta Live and start in about 2 3 minutes from here on. We have a very special guest today, and it's been an absolute honor and privilege to have a women leader having a conversation with us on the Insta Live today. Let me just Aditi on the chat. Hi Aditi. Hi. Hello. How
Hi,
are you?
hi. Can you hear me? Is everything okay? Like background?
Absolutely
Okay,
fine. Absolutely
perfect.
fine. No worries. We're
My
going
first time
good.
live on Instagram, and I've seen many, but I've never been on. So I'm very happy to do it for Moneyfront. And thank you for teaching me.
No, absolutely our pleasure. And I can understand my first live was quite a nerve-wracking thing for me because I just till then I was not even active on Insta, and I think it's kind of changed my entire outlook towards Insta since then. So good to have you, Aditi. And I think we have a few people joining in. We have quite a lot of people who will just keep pooling in as we move our conversation. But welcome once again. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege. And I think our hunt started 2 3 weeks back when we were discussing with the team that we have done so many Facebook lives with fund managers, industry veterans, experts from the mutual fund industry, but never, Aditi, in our 4 years of existence till date, have we got a women leader coming and talking to
Oh
us. And
no,
I,
why?
I don't know, but
You need
that's
more
strange, but
women.
that's true.
But that's also not your fault because there are not that many women in this industry, and that's a big thing that I hope one day changes.
Absolutely. And I want to start with that specific point. What do you think? So you've been in this position now for a while. You have seen the industry very closely. What do you think is the reason for such low participation for women? And how do industry move ahead and change this?
So why don't I first start with just giving a background about how I got here? And
That'll
then
be
we
great.
can then talk about why someone else may not be here. Well, for me, I was born and brought up in Bombay. I studied there. Then I went to do my undergrad in the US. I worked in the US for 2 years. I worked in investment banking at Merrill Lynch in New York, did the whole Wall Street thing. It was really killer. I came back in 2000, just when that dot-com bust was going on. But I wasn't in the telecom. I was always in financial institutions, so it didn't matter that much to me. But I could see that, and it was my first experience of boom and bust. And after that, I did, fixed income sales here. And back in 2000, 2001, when you were doing fixed income sales, you were selling to, corporates, and you were teaching them as to what a liquid fund is, or you were selling government securities to them, or you were selling government securities to a fund manager. So it was a very institutional sales in like a government in a desk in India was limited like that. Um,
Understood.
so that was like my first sort of foray into this area. And then in 2000, I always wanted to do something more B2C versus B2B. Always. Maybe because I'd studied marketing and I found that fascinating or whatever it was. I moved into the and I'd studied finance as an undergrad as well. So if you've
Okay.
studied finance and you want to do something B2C, it's really this. Or maybe you're going to insurance. Um,
Right.
so I was lucky enough that DSP also had an asset management company. And, and there was an opening. And so at that point, they asked me just to come along. And I had absolutely no job description when I came along. I was just thrown in. You figure out where there is space for you, and you have to figure out
Which year was this? Which year was this?
2002 November.
Okay. Okay.
I've
So
been
it's
in
been
this
quite.
industry since then. I mean, you can say even 1 2 years before that because I was, following everything even when I was doing fixed income sales. And then after that, it's just been here. I started, as I said, I just had to find my way. So I realized that there was no international fund. I said, why aren't international people investing in India? If you remember in 2002, I'll ask you a question. How much did the market go up in 2002 in India?
I'm not sure. I think the rally didn't even start at that point in time. 2004 was perhaps the start of the rally or something. So,
Yeah. So
then,
2002, it went up about 3%. Then
wow.
2003, we had that Iraq invasion. That was a big deal and all. We launched our top 100 fund thinking large caps will do well, this, that. Okay. 2003, the market was up. 103%. We've never had that again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, I was 27, 20, yeah, 27. I said, oh, but why aren't foreigners investing? And I'd naively go and talk to the Merrill Lynch that time. Do you know our market? Do you know what it's up? It's up 100%. And they're like, really? Because no one was looking at India in those days, And I said, yeah,
Right.
you all should, I was talking to the financial advisors, why aren't you all telling your people to invest in India? And they're like, oh, because there's no real vehicle. I said, you can invest in our funds, but they said it's too tough to fill in paperwork, send it, this, that. So how can you get us a platform? So then at 27, fully naively, no one's really looking at India. That's the best when you have no biases and inhibitions. I just started talking to Merrill guys. You guys should have a fund in India. Why not? This, that. Then in India, I said, people are not interested. We had started a fund in 97 and we had not gathered enough money. There is no interest, blah,
Right.
blah. I said, no, it doesn't matter. We'll start another 100% up. How can no one want to be in India? This, that. So then I somehow figured it out. We got through a lot of crying, begging, going to SEBI. I don't know how many times I went to SEBI and sat in offices. And I actually got permission for a fund to be launched out of Mauritius. And we would be managing it in India and Merrill would be
Wow.
managing it for us. We got $90 million in January when we launched it, 2005. And everyone thought it was huge because they're like, listen, we're only doing this as a favor for you. We don't think it's going to be big. And then,
Which fund was this, Aditi?
so we called it the Merrill, at that time was the Millim Fund. And then it was the BGF India Fund, the BlackRock Global Funds India Fund,
All right.
out of Luxembourg. But, Luxembourg to Mauritius to India. So I'd learned all about the tax rules, learned everything, put up an office, everything we had done. And, for me, I decided to do an MBA after that. So I left my little baby in January when we raised the money. And then by end of, I left to go to business school in August. We were already like, few 100 million, but we hadn't gotten certain permissions in countries. But when that came, by the end of that year, we were over $1 billion. And a Japan fund had come into the situation.
Wow.
And we were like 2 billion. And no one had ever thought that this little thing would have been that big. And I was in business school. So I kind of, used to see all this remotely. And then I came back in 2007, fresh with ideas. It's not easy, because you're thinking in a whole different way. Everyone in India is thinking in a different way. You're interacting with business school people who think in one way. Everyone in India doesn't think the way you've been taught in business school. So I remember it took a while again to find my feet. And then in 2010, I started looking more at retail marketing. I'd also made a decision back then that I didn't want to be in fund management and I wanted to be on the business side instead.
Wow.
That I'd made that decision actually even before that international fund thing. So, so before the international fund, I decided, a friend of mine has joined. Hi. I didn't realize I've been giving everyone, your money front address and telling people to join.
Okay.
So,
That's nice of you.
Anyway, so I, in 2010, I decided to do more retail. And then in 2011, the marketing head left and they were going to get a new marketing person. I said, no, please, this is my passion. Can I be head of marketing? So, I'd done some retail sales, then I did marketing, then the head of sales left in 2005. So I kind of was put into that position. And in 2012 around, I was getting very into this whole, to the internet. And though the internet had been there forever,
Right.
smartphones had just come up and I had friends as VCs and a really close friend of mine from undergrad college told me that, listen, if you want to be serious about this, Aditi, you can't have online investing as some operation side business. You gotta have a separate business, call it e-business and go for it. At which point we started hunting for someone and we found Santosh Navlani who started our incredible, we call it InvestX, but our B2C website as it is today, our app, both our apps, the Android and the iOS. And so that's really where, the e-business started. And let me tell you, it was not easy because, operations had it in their hands. So really to explain to technology and operations how it's going to be a separate department and how serious
I
we
can
are
understand
about it.
completely. Yeah.
You know, and have separate and developers in-house. Oh my God, that was the biggest fight. I said, I want developers in-house. I don't care.
That's a nightmare.
So because you know you can quickly, you know, you can make changes much faster. You know, and you're more in control when you have developers and product
Completely.
team with you, under you. So we did that back in 2012, and you know, it was really, it was quite something, my journey. And then 2015 I became head of sales. I had to learn a whole new area, which still to me I'm, you know, learning. I'm still a student there. And so all of this has come together on the business side, and that's where I am. And why women are not there is because I do feel that women are not confident in the area of finance many
Hmm.
times. And I also feel that women sometimes don't feel confident of making their own investment decisions for whatever reasons. And if they're at finance, the more glamorous part seems to be investment banking always, you know, in people's minds. But
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
investment management, because of the mutual fund industry and because of such big, you know, now fund managers and hedge funds and all that getting so much more press,
Hmm.
it is becoming interesting. But yet, I don't see enough people on the fund management side. I see people
Right.
coming into sales. In fact, for me, my head of sales, retail sales, my head of institutional sales, and my senior people under them in sales are all women. Not
Wow.
because we want it, but not because we said we need women. I think the right person for the right job. This happened to
Got
be. And we have about 30% women in DSP. But I mean, I still say right person for the right job. I would
I
encourage women to get into this field because it's a field that you can, I feel, juggle and manage instead
so
of doing. Yeah.
I get you. So I completely get, and what a fantastic journey that has been for last 20 years. If you see your path, right? And today being head of sales, head of e-business, I think it's an enviable position. Let me tell you that,
Yeah.
with such a marquee name. So you mentioned two things, and I'll touch upon both the things. One was the global part of it, how you got approvals from SEBI and launched the first global fund. I'll come to that. I'll come to that in a bit. Basically.
That's
And
great.
the second part which I want to handle first is that you said you found very few women taking these kind of positions, and in the industry there is the ratio is quite skewed, right? And we all agree to that. I want to check the other side from you. Across your schemes and in your investor base, do you see women investors? Do you see folios coming from women? What do you think are the inhibitions, and what should women investors particularly look forward to, and how can they kind of tackle these things?
So, you know, about 30% of our investors are women. But
Okay, that's interesting.
if you call the phone numbers, the husband picks up the phone.
Okay, okay.
So they may be in their name, but they don't make their own investment decisions. And the reason I've said this many times, so sorry for the people who've already heard me, but the reason women need to make their own investment decisions is, one is that if they earn their own money, then they should own their own money, right? It's their
Yeah, yeah.
money, right? Two is that women will inherit, whether, you know, it doesn't have to be in the past, what happened is everything went to the elder son, usually in a will. And if there was no will, the law said it has to go to the elder son. Now it's equal distribution to the living spouse and the children.
Yes.
In fact, my mother died in 2015, and that's how I know the law well. And she had died without, I mean, 2005, and she died without a will. So I know it was just equally distributed. And so whatever was in her name, little was in her name, but whatever. So my point is that tomorrow suddenly you can become an inheritor. You didn't even realize, and it's your money, and probability of you inheriting will be higher than it was in the past. Second of all, if we're working and we want to take some time off to have a child, you have to have some passive income, right?
Hmm.
So you know, because you don't want to feel I want to rush back to work. What if you don't? And what if you feel you only want to rush back to work because of that paycheck that makes you feel secure? If you plan it,
Right.
you can have actually some plan with your financial advisor. You know, you can have some passive income for those years if you plan. Um,
It's a very interesting point.
and which men don't have to worry about. Okay.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Third of all, unfortunately, you know, we are, you know, experiencing more divorces in our time. And women are the beneficiaries of alimony because they're usually, not earning as much as their husbands. And if they want to keep their lifestyle somewhat the same, they will get some alimony. And it's how you invest that alimony correctly, which is going to be very important. And to make sure that you're not being taken, for granted in any point, and that you don't blow up the money. I know people who've blown up the money. I know people who've just left it in the bank and not known what to do. I know people who are coming to me for some help, and sometimes they don't even know what alimony to ask for because they don't know what their expenses are. They don't know how much money they will need for the future to live the same lifestyle. And they don't even know what they have in the bank. They don't know what's in their name. So actually we've developed something which is controversial, but I don't know why, because it's actually helped some people, which is an alimony calculator, which is available on our DSP site, that just tells you if you put all your expenses in. Now you can fight about the expenses with your spouse, but the math should not be fought about. It gives you inflation. You can change the inflation rate, and it also calculates your the possible interest rate you could get in the future, right? Your discount rate.
That's a first I've heard.
But you can, you can take the tool as a IFA, as a fund, as an advisor, and you can switch those numbers the way you want. The expenses have to be filled by your client, and the client has to be honest enough to say what her bank account is, what is in her bank account today, what her income is today, and if she's getting parental support. So sometimes that even alimony pops up saying, "Dear Mrs. So-and-so, you don't need alimony." Okay, so it is just to keep your lifestyle the same, because why should a woman have to compromise her lifestyle? So it's a very fair calculator actually, and that is so. Anyway, so divorce is one reason, which is, it's very sad, but it happens. And a woman is already dealing with emotional insecurity. She should not have to deal with financial insecurity.
Absolutely.
So she needs to teach herself. And then the third thing I would say is, the last thing I would say is that today insurance has penetrated the market more than, has penetrated the market much more than, I would say, mutual funds also. Yes. And women statistically outlive men. Right? So then the beneficiary of this life insurance is usually the spouse, woman. So she again needs to know what to do. Money. Oh. So there are many ways a woman is going to have money. So in America, they said there's a 90% probability at some point a woman will be managing her money on her own. She may be 90 years at that point, but there will be a time. So why not get prepared?
That's a very, very interesting data points and quite unique set of points. And I'm sure all the women audience who's out there listening perhaps will just gives them a food for thought, that someday they will be burdened with the part of managing their own finances, and perhaps it's never too late to start. So the earlier you start, I think the better it is. And for all the viewers, let me just tell you, DSP also runs a platform called Winvestor, which is where the handle is live with us, which is a women dedicated platform, right? It's a women specific platform which you guys run.
Yeah, so we have a site on our website, dspim.com/Winvestor, and we also have our Instagram page, which is, right now being at, with you right now is where I'm doing this from. So there are two ways to connect to us. You can message us, you need help. Our calculators on the main website also.
I'll check out the interesting calculators. Okay, so quickly getting on to the other part which we left that time, Aditi, which is the global allocation part, right? Now, and that's very interesting, and you have a lot of expertise in that area. You've been in US, you've launched the global funds in India, you've marketed them, you understand the ins and out of it, right? Now, I've seen for last, 3-6 months odd, since the start of this year, there's a bandwagon to invest in global funds in India, just going by their past performance, right? Now, there are two parts to it. One part is global allocation really warranted in a portfolio? What are your thoughts about it? And what kind of a global allocation one should look at, right? You yourself run a gold fund, which is a slightly different nature of a gold fund. It's not directly commodity, but companies which invest in gold mining and so on and so forth. And you have a natural resources fund. So what kind of a global allocation, if at all? That's part number one. And part number two, I'll come later maybe, which is chasing returns and investing in the best performing funds of last year. But let's cover the global part first. What are your thoughts on that?
So I am very passionate about global investing because I feel that, sitting in India, if you look at the MSCI World Index, right? So if someone had to invest in the world and just take an index and invest in a passive fund, India is less than 2%.
Yeah.
But why in India is all our money 99.99% in India? I mean, are we that smart? It's the rhetoric question. Okay, so we have to globally diversify. Everyone in the world is globally diversified only because this option has been given to us very recently, and also recently when India had done well, meaning these global funds started coming in 2008, 2009, where the 10 past years India had done very well. So everyone thought that the next 10 years India will do well, but actually the US market outperformed. So we were looking at the past and not putting money into US saying, how can US do better than India? And it did. So my point is that we have to not have recency bias. One, look at the world. Two, because diversification is truly when you diversify in the world. Now look at what has happened in Corona. Some countries have been able to manage it well. Some countries have not. Some countries may do better than the other countries. Some people gave a better stimulus than other countries did. We have to diversify. We have the tools to take advantage of all this. Why don't we use them? One, so there are a lot of US funds now. People have been talking. So we have a US fund that is pretty diversified. It's across the Russell 1000 index. So the top 1000 companies of the US were not only tech concentrated. Of course, the large ones are tech because they just are tech, But we do have the rest of, the companies. I think we have about 60 stocks, maybe 60, 70 stocks now. It's managed from BlackRock in New Jersey. Okay. So we have the US Flexible Fund. We also have a global allocation. So people ask me where to invest. Now, close your eyes on global al fund because the experts will decide where in the world your money should be. Now, India is again given less than 2% weight there because that's the index weight. So you should have an India portfolio which gives you your India weight so you feel good and, something familiar and the home bias will come into the picture, right? Because we're always biased to investing in our own country because we feel familiar. But there has to be global allocation. And if you don't know, put in the global al fund. This global al fund is because it has debt, it has equity, it has commodities, and it has currencies. Okay. No one gives you such good diversification. At the same time, if the market rockets, this is not going to do as well as the rocketing market, but it will do pretty well because it has 50% equity. 57, I think, about 50% equity. Okay, but when the market fell, this one didn't fall that badly because you had other things to prop it up because it's global allocation. So I'm talking market means you can say US market. So you want to be globally diversified. The other thing that we have in our suite of, in our menu of international funds is, as you said, the gold fund, which invests in gold mining companies. Now, India doesn't have any.
Absolutely.
We have what is called an energy fund. So, World Energy Fund, and in that energy fund, 60% is traditional, like a Chevron or a BP, traditional energy funds. But they are again diversified. They're so huge. And the second we have is sustainable energy. 40% is sustainable energy, and we may move more to sustainable energy in the future. Again, India doesn't have any green companies, green energy companies, which are publicly listed. So you can't play that. We will be at some point maybe launching, even tech funds, etc. Which I want to launch funds that people in India don't have access otherwise to. We have a global agriculture fund. Everyone needs to eat, but globally diversified in those areas that, again, India may not have. And the other thing we're doing is like in our healthcare fund, we're the only fund that has 25% we're allowed to go international. So we have 3 stocks internationally in there, which are tilted towards, instruments like, medical instruments, which again, we don't have publicly listed companies here that I can play that theme in. So it's a healthcare fund. Why should I not have medical equipment in there? But I don't have it in India. So we have to think globally we have to diversify globally. We cannot be stuck in just thinking of India. And also remember that the Indian rupee has depreciated on average
Yeah, I
3%
was
for
just
the
coming to
last 20 years. So this is another good hedge to that, especially if your children are going to go abroad and you're going to have some of those expenses in dollars.
right.
Um, so I'm just throwing that out, that
Got you.
we
Got you.
cannot ignore global diversification today.
So basically, just in nutshell, what you're saying is obviously there are quite a number of themes, countries, plays, allocations which can't be played sitting in India because you don't have access to pub. So those kind of companies are not there in the public markets, and you
Yeah.
can't invest. Obviously, India as part of the world capitalization is a very very minuscule part, perhaps 2% or less, and that's more of the reason why you should go out and look for opportunities abroad. And third portion, which you said, obviously currency has been consistently depreciating against USD, and if that trend continues, I think you tend to benefit more because of this kind of a diversification. So yeah, all those points put together, global allocations, I think for our viewers who are watching out here, is a must do. That's what we have been also telling at Moneyfront. Some portion of your portfolio, be it 10%, 15%, has to go into global funds. But that brings me to a very interesting point, Aditi. In my entire career, I've seen no particular asset class repeating performance, or no particular scheme perhaps consistently being at number one or number two or number three also, let's say, for years put together, right? Every quarter, every half year, the asset class moves around. There is sector rotation, there is asset class rotation, and there is scheme rotation also, very very frequently, right? But the biggest mistake or the folly which we see in markets from investors is that they kind of chase past returns. Global funds have seen a deluge of money, but that's also because last 1 year has been terrific for global funds, and people are left, right, and center now kind of investing into global themes. Do you think that's the right approach? Should people be looking at only past returns and then considering, or what should be the broader criterias be?
See, you have to diversify. I don't know tomorrow what
Yeah,
is going to be the winner. For sure, this is just because it's done well in the past doesn't mean it'll do well in the future. Doesn't mean it also won't do well in the future.
yeah,
Since when we've been saying that a tech bubble is going to burst, a tech bubble is going to burst. Amazon is too big, but every day it gets bigger. And for good
yeah.
reason. These are not zero, like, in the dot-com boom, if you remember, people were not making profits and they were doing crazy well. So we have to realize that yes, we cannot chase returns and we have to be diversified. Okay. And even if you decide to say, Array, this has happened in the past, so I'm going to put money, don't expect that return in the future. If something has made, say, 60, 70%, doesn't mean it's going to make 60, 70% again. It may,
Yeah.
it may be negative, or it may make 10%, 12%. So can we just tone down our expectations that the past may not repeat, and therefore, A, we need to diversify. B, please look at your entire portfolio. Don't say this fund has not done well and that fund has. How many times, Mohit, has your client come to you? Ye fund, this one is not performing, so we need to
Daily,
switch out
daily.
of this
Let me
one
tell you
into
that.
that one. And the minute you switch out, that fund does well.
Absolutely.
Okay, but you're telling the guy, Array, this fund is X% of your portfolio, but your portfolio return is 10%. Your overall portfolio return is 10%. So this one fund, what are we worrying about? Because the 1 minute you switch out of that one will do well. And that would have kept your 10% going, because then the next fund will not do well.
It's a classic Murphy's Law, huh? The lane in which you stand will start moving the
Yeah.
slowest, and the lanes will always look better than
So
yours.
please look at your portfolio as a whole. If you ask me, two funds, say from DSP, if I had to choose two funds, not that I've done that, but if I had to choose two funds and just keep them forever, never have to worry, would be Global Al and would be my dynamic asset allocation fund, right? I
Oh,
get
that would have
equity
been
in there, I
my
get debt in
question.
there, I get global debt in there, I get global equity in there, I get currency in there, I get a little commodity, because it has gold and silver also, my
Yeah.
global al fund. So sab kuch I can get in two funds. But yes, the portfolio return is not going to be astronomical. Okay, it will be over time, it will be steady and it will be good. But what happens is people like to see that one healthcare fund. Array, I got 60% in this fund. But they don't see that if you keep it 60%, for 10, 15 years, I'm going to get 60% a year on year on average.
Right.
So we have to also realize, look at your portfolio holistically, be patient with the funds you have. Don't chase the next return. Don't expect that because this is done well, the next thing will do well. In fact, look at the theme that has not done so well. Like, for example, energy. Now stocks, oil was down to the bottom. Now what is going to happen when planes fly again back to normal?
Yeah.
Demand is almost back, but the fuel demand is not almost. I mean, the air fuel demand is still at 60%.
That's an interesting
Okay.
point. Yeah.
So when that comes back, for example, but energy is so not sexy. Why anyone wants to look at oil? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
I agree.
we don't realize that these are the sort of themes we have to think of in advance, and it may not happen next year. I don't know what's going to happen with Corona next year, third year, but it'll have to go back to normal, right?
Perfect.
And we have to start thinking like that. And also, it won't go on forever. So you have to have a little bit of tactical for the fun in your portfolio if that's what you want.
Yeah. And perhaps I think yeah, that's where a role of a fund manager also comes into play, Aditi, right? A fund manager is out there to pick these themes well in advance, and that's why we say that investors should perhaps rely on a multi-cap or a large cap fund in their portfolios. They should have those kind of allocations because finally the fund manager will take a judgmental call in terms of which sector to move in and what kind of allocations to be put into. And yes, of course, global L kind of themes.
No, but even the fund manager, like the energy theme that I'm talking about, the Indian marketing oil companies and especially like the marketing exploration companies are very government controlled.
Yeah.
Because of subsidies and price, cutoffs, etc. So again, you really want to play the theme, you have to go abroad.
Yes.
So even our fund managers in India sometimes are limited unless they have a full research arm abroad to
Completely.
think internationally as well. So I'm just saying that we have to think holistically, we have to think differently, we have to think ahead of times if we want to play in the thematic way, or get a dynamic asset allocation fund of whichever fund house that you like, get a global allocation fund, put them together. Very boring.
Yes.
But Buffett says when it's boring, it's the right thing.
Absolutely.
The minute it's boring is the right thing. So, put those two funds and never see Mohit again. Mohit, you should put two funds.
Please.
And for 10 years, no talking to your client after that. It's going to be boring. So.
Okay, so let's not make it that boring also. Let's keep some element of
no, they'll come. But 10 years later, you tell them, look at your portfolio today. It's amazing. You know what I'm saying?
No, but I kind of agree with you that boring is best when it comes to investments, and simple investments make the most amount of return, and you just hold and sit tight with it. I think that's the best thing to do.
Absolutely. But there has to be diversified. If you want to hold and if you want to hold and sit tight, it has to be diversified.
Absolutely. So for all those people who are out there on the live conversation, if you have any questions, you can just start posting it. We can pick up a few questions while we are talking also. And one of the questions, Aditi, which came in right at the start of this conversation, and I'll pick it up. You mentioned this right now, that fund managers typically won't have that kind of flexibility to move into any theme, any kind of zone or any kind of capitalization. And one such thing has happened just now, like 3-4 days back, when SEBI came out with a new regulation and said that the multi-cap funds will have to be now true to label and have only 25%, minimum 25% in large, mid and small categories. Till now, that was the only zone which fund managers had, where they had full creativity and flexibility and they could have moved anywhere. So two things, what's your take on this overall change which SEBI has brought in, and how is DSP looking forward to it? What are you thinking? What's your strategy going forward on the multi-cap fund per se, which is the DSP equity fund?
So just to give everyone an overview, SEBI has said that multi-cap funds have to remain multi-cap. So what was going on right now is that multi-caps were mainly large cap. They had a bit of mid cap and almost no small cap. So then were they really multi-cap? And that was what SEBI was saying, that how can you say you're multi-cap? But then the argument was that the Nifty 500, which is the top 500 stocks, which is really what the multi-cap fund followed, in the top 500 stocks also, small caps are barely 1-2%. You know, it's 6%. I think it's a
Yeah,
small
the weightage
part
is
of
around 6%.
it's a small part of the Nifty 500 index. So if now we have to have 25% in small cap, then then no one should even compare to the Nifty 500 index, and then we'll have to have a different index. But there is a challenge because small caps are not very liquid. Meaning, I
Right.
can buy a small cap today, but tomorrow, if I want to sell it, sometimes it can get a little tough. Or I'll be driving the price by my selling and buying
Yeah.
because it's not enough of a liquid market. I hope people will understand that. You can't buy and sell as easily. And so in India, small caps abroad is different. So it's not the easiest. And I think we're talking to SEBI, trying to let them understand that. That sometimes maybe moving to what is in their minds a multi-cap. And I respect the fact that multi-cap should be called multi-cap because it should be a true multi-cap. So I respect what they're saying. But how can we both make this practical as well as be true to the label is what we have to now discuss with SEBI.
Got you, got you. But anything right now concrete on the DSP equity fund side as of now, or
Nothing yet. No, we're talking. We're thinking and talking.
not yet?
We have till
Okay,
end of
okay.
January.
Understood. Understood. So for the investors right now, I think it's a wait and watch scenario. Basically, the fund, I think the scheme continues to do well. So for all those who are holding the scheme, continue to hold the scheme. And as and when the fund house takes a call to either reclassify, recategorize, rename, or maybe perhaps become true to label, I think they will definitely intimate all the investors and
True
come
to
out with
label is
a
very important. So we will be, we have to just see on how to do it. But yes, we will
okay.
talk.
So perfect, perfect. We have a question out here, Aditi. What is the ideal portfolio for a woman? Should our strategy be different than that of a man? And that's a good question. I think money is just money at the end of the day, and the color of the money remains green. So portfolios have to be same. Or you think there has to be a different allocation for women?
So I don't think so. I think Mohit, here's where a financial advisor really comes in. So what Mohit will advise me if I was his client versus what he'll advise another woman or a man will be completely different. Mohit, I don't think you have any two portfolios that are the same. And this
Absolutely
is
not.
why a financial advisor is extremely important because they will look at your particular situation. I don't think a woman and a man has to have something different, and yet maybe they'll need something different. I'm sure you'll ask them, what is your age? Do you have children? Are you the sole earner? You and your husband both earning money. Who's contributing, to the child's education? When will the child, do you want to send your child abroad to study? All these are questions, and together, we will, Mohit will establish your goals for you, and I think after that, accordingly, it'll be important to see which kind of funds will be important for you. And also, I think Mohit, you'll also look at the temperament. So even if someone, so we call there are two things you have to look at: risk tolerance and risk taking ability. And that is
Right.
regardless if you're a man or a woman. What is risk tolerance? Risk tolerance is how much I can afford, how much my mentality allows me to take risk. Am I willing to take that risk and go into equity? And I'm okay with markets fluctuating. Markets will fluctuate. Equity markets will fluctuate. Can I stomach that, or will I get really hyper and go to Mohit? Arey Mohit, what have you done? And I'm really scared. My husband is shouting at me. What? So Mohit will assess that. So that's your risk taking, and he'll ask questions and assess that. So that's the risk taking tolerance. The second thing is risk taking ability. That means, are you young? So if you're 25 years old, say, if you live till 80, you have 65 years of your life left. So you have enough time to compound your money. So Mohit will tell you that, maybe you should take a little more risk in equity. Arey, I'm very scared. Mohit will hold your hand. You know what I'm saying? So that your financial advisor will decide that for you. Otherwise, if you're 80 years old and you say, Mohit, I am like, I'm living off a pension, I'm fully retired, but I want to take full risk. I don't want to go into the riskiest area possible. Mohit will say, like, no way. It's like, at 80 years old, even if I want to bungee jump, someone will tell you, your doctor will tell you, you cannot do that, right? So
Absolutely.
this is something a financial advisor will bring together. So I can't say this is the right thing or wrong. I don't know, Mohit. I would like you to maybe say a few words there.
No, no, I think perfect, bang on, and every investor is unique, as every human being is, right? They have their own aspirations, their own goals, financial needs, and every situation is so unique that you have to really carve out a portfolio, and that's what we do at Moneyfront. Even being a digital platform, we are quite phygital in that sense that we have a team of customer experience team, our advisors who will always try and handhold the customer at the time of onboarding, try and understand their specific scenarios,
Yeah.
situations, and then carve out a portfolio and tell them why don't you adopt this approach. And from there on, they can start their digital journey. And I think that's how we treat it. Every जैसे I remember those famous Asian Paint ads, हर घर कुछ कहता है, right? So every investor has a unique thing to themselves. So that's how it is.
Yes.
And
So
every
sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Aditi.
No, and so that phygital thing is very important that you have, and that is quite unique. And I think sort of following the advice of people, if you need to, will be very important. So I think that's bang
Yeah.
on.
So there was one question which went by while we were chatting, and I think it's related to the question. And the question is from Mandan. He says that as an experienced industry expert, what do you feel about the new age robo advisors, as in the digital platform like ourselves and others? A lot of fintech coming in the market. How do they stand vis-a-vis the old age, the old guard, the professional advisors? What the kind of digital change you are seeing in the industry? Let me just put it in a very larger sense.
Well, I think the young generation is getting much more, used to doing things digitally. Obviously, the pandemic has helped. Um,
Yeah.
I feel the older generation also had to do some stuff, but they still, I think, more comfortable physically. Um, you know, uh, but you know what Moneyfront has built, I'm sure, is looking 10 years from today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And 10 years from today, there'll be many more do-it-yourself people.
Completely.
You will have upgraded your platform, to even a different level. You will have learned so much from your digital players, and being digital, being hybrid is going to be the way forward, because as much as people can do it themselves, they still need to know that there is someone who can help them on the other end.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Not all the time, but even for me, the other day I was on Amazon. Like, Amazon is completely digital. Like, where do you ever need help? But I had one very specific question, and they answered it really well, but I needed to call, and they were really good in picking up and bang on and service and everything. And I love them more now, if that's possible.
That's interesting.
So
That's right.
I think that's going to be the future. The robo can't do everything. We're too much in an emotional game for a robo to fully do everything. So I think that's really the future.
So
My
basically, middle path is what you're saying. Multi-al kind of a scenario here also.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
best approach to your portfolio. Okay, so I have two more questions out here, and perhaps both are linked. One from Muskan and from Shanuj. So other than the multi-cap funds, Shanuj says, which other funds can keep a mix of foreign and Indian equities? So are there any other funds who can keep a mix of foreign and Indian equities?
Every
Right,
fund is
it's quite
allowed.
open, I think.
Every fund is allowed to do that.
Every fund is allowed. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
and but the thing is, you need to have the expertise in-house to be able to do that.
I
So
was just
either
coming to
you
that.
just invest in another fund, or then you have an expertise. So
So,
I think DSP, you will see much more from us in the future. But to start, a healthcare fund has that.
okay, okay. So very interesting, Shanuj. To answer your question, there is no such restriction. Any fund can go into international allocations. Just bear in mind that if a fund has more than 35% allocation in international equities, it will be classified as a debt fund, and the taxation for you will change. Right? As long as fund continues to manage over 65% in Indian equities, it's treated as equity in India. for your capital gains. So just bear that thing in mind. Otherwise, no such restrictions. And Shanuj has one more part to it, which is the part which Muskan was also asking. What options are DSP considering, or are you considering right now to reclassify your multi-cap? Is that a thought process, Aditi?
Um, no, I
Not,
can't comment
not as
right
yet.
now. It's too
Okay.
early.
Understood. Understood. Perfect. Perfect. So early days, Shanuj and Muskan, I think we'll come to know pretty soon on that as to what each fund house is trying and doing. So any other question, guys? Please feel free to put it. Okay. So there are interesting questions which are coming, and I can see one from Swati. I will take it as a bunch of questions, and I think Swati, thanks for putting that question out there, which is where do you invest your money, Aditi? And
Okay,
so
very
that's
important.
interesting.
At DSP, we have a rule. You are not allowed, if you're an employee of DSP, which I am, you are
Okay.
not allowed to invest your money in anything else than mutual funds. You can do
Oh,
FDs, but if you cannot do stocks and you cannot do bonds alone, you have to invest in mutual funds. Because if I'm selling a mutual fund to you, then why should I be buying in stock? I have to eat what I serve. It's a rule, and we all took a pledge last year. Okay, if you're an
wow.
employee of DSP, you take a pledge. If you're going to be a new employee, you're told this on day one, meaning when you're interviewed, कि ये है
That's
criteria.
interesting.
And second, it has to be a DSP fund.
Oh, wow.
Unless you want to invest in a certain fund, like say I didn't have healthcare and you want to invest in healthcare fund, you'll have to ask permission, and if you're given permission, you can do it.
Oh, that's interesting.
But
Aditi, let me just interrupt you for a quick minute and tell everyone what you're saying and kind of re-emphasize, guys, for all those who come in contact with any DSP fund house personnel, you have to know that their skin is in the game. They are investing, they're putting their
in
money
the
where their
game,
mouth is. So I
skin
just
is in
wanted to
the
re-emphasize that's a
game.
great point.
And if the fund managers are not up to our expectations, if they're not up to your expectations, they're certainly not up to our expectations. So you can imagine how much pressure there is on them. And
Wow.
the thing is, and we're very proud of it. And second of all, where my money, my number one fund is my own equity and bond fund. So for all my telling you, Mohit, I only have two funds and all that. I mean, that's utopian thinking. That is not true. I like to taste all my funds, so I have almost all my funds in my portfolio. But my
Okay.
number one fund is equity and bond.
Equity and bond. So hybrid. Hybrid seems to be your favorite spot.
I like it because it's the balancing happens without my tax. I don't have to pay any tax when the
You
balancing happens.
not to be actively involved in it.
Yeah, and I don't have to worry about talking to the CA. I sold this. Now I'm in equity. Now in debt. Like, so my number one fund is that. Then I have
Wow.
all the other fixed income funds and equity
Do
funds
you
and
hold your
US
gold
funds.
fund? That's a question.
Sorry.
Do you hold your gold fund? That's
Yeah,
a question. Which is
I
it?
did.
You do?
So I did. Then I sold it. Then I bought it a few years ago. Thank God. But it's not a huge percentage of my portfolio because it's a very volatile fund, and I've experienced the volatility in the past. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
you have to know when to get in and when to get out of that fund. It's
Perfect.
not a long-term holding fund. If you ask me what a long-term holding fund is, it's my equity and bond fund. It's an equity fund. It's a global AL fund. It's a US equity fund. Like that. But I would not say a gold fund is a long-term fund. But yes, it's a fun fund. If you get in the right time, it's a
So
fun
fun. Okay.
fund.
That's an interesting take. So,
Yeah.
of course, yellow metal gold is not always glittering. So be cautious when you invest. And I myself experienced volatility. In fact, when the NFO came in
Yeah.
2007, I was in City those days, and we kind of took it to all our investors. Then 2008, 9, I think it came through, slide
Yeah.
through the
Hit it up. Like,
fall
yeah.
was like, yeah, it was extremely tough to investors. And now again, obviously, last 2 years has been superb run. Okay, G. Pranshu was mentioning a question. I'm quite sorry, G. Pranshu, I missed your question. I'm not able to locate it. If you can put it back for me, I think that'll be great, and I'll definitely put it to Aditi. I'm really sorry, I can't find that question actually. Okay, if there are any more questions, please feel free, Aditi. Otherwise, I have a quick kind of a rapid fire with you. Maybe some smaller things which we would like to
Sure.
it's kind of a takeaway from you.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go with that. So what's your preferred asset class, Aditi? Is it equity, debt, gold, real estate? What's your preferred class?
From all those equity.
Equities. Do you invest in gold, physical metal, not the fund?
Ah, I'm a woman. What a kind of question is that?
So you like that?
But I don't look at it as an investment. I may tell my husband it's an investment, but it's for enjoyment, you know.
Okay, all right. So not as an investment class.
No.
Okay. Who are your favorite fund managers globally? Because you are more like a global.
I mean, how can I not say Buffett?
Okay.
So, I mean, the guy is just repeatedly, you know, even if he's recently not done well and people poo-poo him and boo-boo him and all that, but he's a 90-year-old man who started investing when he was 11, and look at his track record. I mean, who has a 80-year-old track record like that?
Absolutely,
You
absolutely. And his
know?
compounding is phenomenal, honestly. I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
So Charlie
Uh,
Munger and Warren Buffett, yes. It's
interesting.
cliched, but what can I say?
No, but I think they are the gurus, right? So,
Yeah.
any favorite books? Any books which you suggest our viewers should read?
Well, I have a book staring at me called Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and I love his new
Yeah,
series.
it's a new one, right? Which has come
Yeah,
through.
that's called Psychology of Money,
Just
but I haven't
yeah.
read that. But I will, and I've heard it's great. But I
Yes.
love Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. Um, Amazing book. What a book.
Okay.
I
Okay.
couldn't put it
Interesting.
down.
Okay. So perhaps it'll be great if you could just WhatsApp us or message us the name of the book, and we'll put it in our video post.
Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. But I'll send.
Okay. Got you. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll put it. Perfect. What are your pastime hobbies? How do you spend time other than when you are not with DSP, not with funds, not with money?
God, the last 6 months, that's all we've done, no? Including Saturday, Sundays, you know. But otherwise, what do I like to do? I love wildlife.
Oh, wow.
So I just I think the last interview I gave actually may have just been about wildlife because we have a big conservation. So I'm the trustee of the Wildlife Conservation Trust, which was started by my family as well.
Okay.
And you know, I'm very passionate about animals. We're very passionate about viewing them. We're very passionate about saving them. And I'm very passionate about meeting other people who feel the same way. And my current obsession, people are going to laugh when I say this, through the lockdown was to master snakes because I love snakes.
Mix.
Yeah,
Wow.
so really to be able to identify at least the Indian snakes and especially the Indian poisonous ones so that, you know, and make people aware. So my friends now, suddenly I get random photographs of snakes. Friends are like, you know, I'm in Alibag and this has come. What do I do? What do I do? So in the middle of
Oh,
my
God.
day, oh, it's a wolf snake. It's not poisonous. Don't worry. This is this. Or, you
You
know,
can make out one.
now
You can
I'm
make out.
learning. I'm learning. And if not, I have experts, friends that then I forward it to and then they tell me because I don't want people to kill them.
That's quite that's a nice thought to go with. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Also, I have one rapid fire on the thing only. Do glass ceilings exist in India? And that's a question which has come up out here. It was not in my prepared list. You want to take that?
Glass ceilings, as in like if you can't
Like
beyond.
women can't move beyond a particular rank. Do you think that's the industry has a little bit of inertia on those
I
counts?
don't think so. I mean, you know, we have a woman CEO in the industry. Radhika is a woman
Yeah.
CEO in the industry. We have, you know, Shikha Sharma was the head of Axis. Chanda Kochar was also the CEO of a, you know, of a bank.
Right.
I think there are, I don't feel, Kalpana Morparia was head of JP Morgan. Like, I don't feel Kaku Nakate is head of Bank of America. I don't,
Lot of men.
I think there are a lot of women in this industry. I don't feel that there is any sort of discrimination. Yes, you have to, I feel, I don't know if it's a woman thing, but I feel you have to fight a little more to make your voice heard. I don't know if that's maybe a subconscious thing that others could have. And if you speak too loudly, then you're being rude. So you have to be able to balance it
Yeah.
because you're a woman and you should use your femininity. Why not? You know what I'm saying? So use, you know, I think women, you know, women can connect in a different way than men can, and they can also do what a man can. So the man can't do what a woman can sometimes. Um, So I think we have the best of both. I don't think there are any glass ceilings.
Okay, that's a
It's a limiting belief that we have to take out.
I agree. Totally. Totally. I think it's all in the mind, and it all starts here and ends here. So if you believe so, I think there is no upper limit to what one can achieve. And I think there was one very interesting name, Arundhati Bhattacharya, which Vicky put in on the chat. So thanks, Vicky, for reminding.
Oh yes, of course, her. And
Yeah.
she's amazing, and she's so spiritual and amazing.
Perfect, perfect. So, Aditi, before we let you go, it's been a good 1 hour conversation, and honestly, we've not realized that 1 hour passed by. It's the longest Insta live we've done so far. On a quick passing note, what's your life's mantra? Where do you see yourself and DSP moving forward, both personally, professionally? What's one thing which you aspire for?
So there are two things I would say. One is if there's a will, there's a way. If you really want to do something, you can do it. Just focus fully and do it. And the second thing, little bit connected to that, and I forgot to tell you one more thing I did over the lockdown and I continue to do is a Gita class, which has
Wow.
affected me a lot. So on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have an hour with ISKCON on the phone, and someone's doing a class. And this is actually my last year. I've been doing it for 4 years before this, and now we finished it. And from that, I learned something called Karma Yoga, which again, my team is tired of me saying, but it's about, and that's what the Gita says, the Nishkam Karma and Karma Yoga, and become a Karma Yogi, which means focus on the work at hand. Don't get distracted with this or that. Do what is in front of you. Don't be so focused on the final goal. Array, it's not come. Array, it's not come. If you are going from a car and you're going at a good speed from Bombay to Pune, you will reach Pune. When will it come? When will it come? How will it come? But if you're going to keep thinking of that, you're not going to concentrate on the road, and you may get into an accident. Concentrate on the road, drive well, because that is what your duty is, and you'll reach your destination. And same with investments. Your money will grow in time, over time, but you cannot go into shortcuts and worry about how rich you will be. Just know it will happen. Have faith.
Perfect. I think that's fantastic last verse. Nishkam Karm, which you rightly put in. Just keep following the path, and the rewards will come through sooner or later. And believe in compounding. I think finally it happens at a later stage. You
Yeah.
just follow the process. So where there is a will, there's a way. Thank you so much, Aditi, for putting those last words to you, last words to us and our audience. And I think it was truly wonderful, and perhaps we hope we'll get you one day more again to do a similar kind of a conversation. And thank you so much for joining in. Thank you.
Listen, happy to do anything for Moneyfront, and really wish you all the best, and wish all the investors and everyone who has joined all the very best.
Thank you so much, Aditi. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.